Mount Pearl itself. I mean, I don't think there's anything, there's nothing
no old
attractive
buildings,
about it.
there's nothing really.
Yeah, there's nothing. Yeah, there's no history to it. So, I mean, maybe down the road it will be history, but.
Poor old Mount Pearl is not picturesque and it's not historic. But it's home, right?
That's right, it's our home. So.
It's our city, we're happy with it, and we're not going anywhere.
I just want to give you a little bit of backstory. 2019, kind of towards the end of 2019, I finished up my education and preparation to become a licensed immigration consultant. And I knew as soon as I started that work in about 2017, the goal was to open an office in St. John's, in Newfoundland, but specifically St. John's. I started making a couple of trips back home at the end of 2019. Of course, my plans got derailed because March 2020, the world shut down, and the idea to launch the business started here in BC, where we're recording this video at my wife's parents' house. I still spend a lot of time in BC, and I spend more time in Newfoundland now than I have for years. But now it's time now to restart the process of setting my main office up in Newfoundland, and as I said, I was focused on St. John's. I wanted the St. John's address, but when I'm home, I'm in Mount Pearl mostly to spend time with my family, but the more that I'm there, the more I'm realizing that it's actually pretty welcoming for businesses. So I'm starting to think about just setting up my headquarters in Mount Pearl instead of St. John's, which, if you know me, you think I'm losing my mind, because when I was in high school, I couldn't get out of Newfoundland fast enough, and it wasn't because I didn't love Newfoundland, it's because I didn't love Mount Pearl. And now in my old age, I'm starting to really feel differently about the place. I was away for so long that some of my thoughts aren't really developed about the city anymore. So that's why I wanted to speak with my parents about that, because they've been there for almost 50 years now. So learn a little bit of what they're thinking about when they decided to move to Mount Pearl and why they stayed for so long, how they feel about it, things like that. So we're gonna have that conversation with the king and queen of the royal family, my parents, Randy and Mary Royal.
Hi, I'm Mary Royal. I'm Mark's mom. I'm going to say Mark's dad. I'm Mark's mom.
I'm Randy Royal. I'm Mark's dad. Well, I grew up basically in downtown St. John's. Basically, our sidewalk was our playground. No grass, no backyard, nothing like that. I was born on Newgower Street and lived on Newgower Street for maybe a year or two. Moved to Goodview Street. Then from Goodview Street, we moved to Barter's Hill. Then from Barter's Hill to Boston Street. The only house that's still there that I lived in was on Goodview Street. The other houses were torn down in the 60s.
When I was born, we lived on Water Street in the west end of the city. A big company, Campbell's, bought the Ranger housing, so people had to move out, because most of us were renters. We didn't own our own homes. Campbell's actually is still in that location. From there we moved down to Gower Street. I lived at 65 Gower Street, and then we moved to 118 Gower Street, and that house is still there. We don't own it anymore, but that was our first home that we owned. We came out our front door onto the step and then down to the pavement, down to the sidewalk. We never had a back garden or front lawn or anything like that growing up. We had to run up to the park to have a playground or to run around and stuff. So it was what we knew, it was what we were used to, but it's one of the reasons we did move to Mount Pearl, is because we wanted to have a back garden and we wanted to have a front lawn. We wanted some of our kids to play if we had any kids. Bannerman Park was the park in the neighborhood. So we spent a lot of time up there. I mean, they had a swimming pool, and then they had swings and monkey bars and seesaws and all that kind of thing. So we wanted to play. Basically, we'd go up and swim. They had free swims during the day all summer long. And it wasn't very far from our house, so that was our playground.
In my case, I spent a number of summers in Bannerman Park playing Little League Baseball. Once I got out of school in the summertime, I spent a lot of time at the park playing ball. What basically brought us into Mount Pearl, I guess, one of the main reasons was I got a job in there with the post office, so that kind of attracted us into Mount Pearl, and we stayed there and raised our family. Still there, and raised our family there, and it was a great place to raise a family.
So you're in the, I guess it's called Glendale. People in Mount Pearl don't really.
We're in the Apollo subdivision as well.
What?
The Apollo subdivision is where we live, yeah.
Really? Is that what
that's what's called it? What it's called?
I didn't know that. So I just learned that the house that I grew up in and the house that my mom and dad still live in is in a subdivision called the Apollo subdivision. I had no idea.
I think we don't know another reason why. Okay, well, the reason it's called the Apollo subdivision was Apollo subdivision built in the late 60s. And about that time, of course, was all about space and going to the moon, that kind of thing. So some of the streets were named after astronauts. Armstrong, Neil Armstrong,
and Kane
Collins. That's the main reason it was called Apollo Subdivision.
And also, a lot of policemen moved in there when they built their houses when the subdivision first came out. And the police, their association, they had a club, and the club was called the Apollo Club. So, I mean, a lot of the policemen moved in there. It all tied together, I guess, the Apollo Club, the Apollo missions and stuff like that, right?
We lived on 4th Street. That was basically the back of Mount Pearl at that time. All behind us was woods and no roads, nothing. And the older part was down around Park Avenue, and Glendale area was kind of just getting developed then. Mount Pearl was probably, I don't know, maybe 10,000 people then at the time. It was a small place at the time. The older part was old country cottages that people used to leave St. John's to come into Mount Pearl.
Yeah, that's what they used to do, their summer homes.
Yeah, summer homes basically, right? So we moved in 1973. We were basically in the woods, I guess you could say, right?
When we first moved in, we moved to Glendale Avenue, and like he said, it was just starting to be developed. Like the first street behind 4th Street is called Michener Avenue, and I mean, we were there when they were actually putting up those townhouses and stuff right behind us, right? And everything beyond that is all since we moved in there, so we've seen a lot of change, right? When we moved in there first, everybody played soccer. Everybody who had a child was at soccer. And we put you guys in soccer. They had a swimming pool down on Park Avenue, and you all took swimming lessons, and you all went pretty far as you could at the time, I think. And then there was baseball. You all played baseball. You all played basketball. We had a couple of arenas. We had the swimming pool. We had the soccer pitches. We had baseball diamonds and softball diamonds. So we had everything that we thought we needed for you guys. We had sidewalks so you could take your bike and go for a ride. We had a garden, let you go out and kick the ball around, and then you played baseball in the garden quite a bit. There was actually a point in time when we had first base and second base, third base and home base. They were almost etched into the grass. I mean, because you played there so much. When you guys were growing up, we had a little sandbox on the bottom of our step, and all the kids in the neighborhood came to play in the sandbox. We had a little hill in the back garden, and it wasn't a hill, I suppose, but a little mound, and you used to roll down over that in the summertime, and in the wintertime it was enough of a grade on it so that you could slide. I think you had a lot of fun in the garden, and we had a swing set and things like that. So I think we kept you occupied in the garden as much as we could.
It was a young community, so a lot of families had young kids right growing up at the time you guys were growing up. So yeah. I think you had lots of friends, and in the neighborhood, and plus in the school. So I mean, like I say, it was.
At the time we were getting married, everybody was heading to Mount Pearl. That's where they wanted to live. That's where we met. Like some really good neighbours we're still friends with today that we met. We almost immediately when we moved in, and with the different associations that you were involved with, the baseball, soccer, and basketball. We met some very nice people that we're still acquaintances, and we still see each other from time to time. So because of the kids and because of the associations and because of the neighbourhood and stuff, we met a lot of nice people too, right? Well, I can't say that Mount Pearl is picturesque. I mean, it's a little bedroom community, basically. It's a suburban area. Most people probably commute back and forth to St. John's to work. Well, it doesn't, like I say, it doesn't really matter to me that it's not picturesque. We live there.
In 15, 20 minutes, you're at the waterfront or the Cabot Tower, or you go the other way and go to Petty Harbour, which is only a short distance away, and just drive and you're there.
We're happy where we live. We're happy with our community, but we also like, we like to see things, so we'll get in our car, we'll take her on. Actually, over the last few years when Mark's been doing this video, so I've seen more of Newfoundland than I've seen all my life, and I've seen some really pretty and beautiful things that I had never seen before. But since Mark has been home, we've gone with him on video jaunts, I suppose, I don't know what you call them, but we saw like Port aux Basques and what was some of them? Isle of Mort and La Rose Blanche, all these places. I mean, we've heard of them, we've never been there, but because of Mark, we got to see these. And shortly after we saw these, I think it was only a week or two later, big hurricane came by and just about annihilated a couple of these small places. So, Mark's taking us to see things that we, places and the sites that we didn't visit on our own, that we enjoyed actually, but we probably wouldn't have done it either if it hadn't been for him. And he loves to take his videos, and we love to go along with him and see things we haven't seen, so.
Like I said before, I mean, we can drive for 15, 20 minutes, and if you want to see icebergs or whales or whatever, I mean, it's at your fingertips, right? It's not that far away, and And we, you can travel further distance, like Mount Vista and Twellingate, and beautiful places.
Well, Mount Pearl has a lot of community spirit. They have Mount Pearl Days, and we have the Winter Carnival. They have special events down at what we call St. David's Field, and we always have outdoor movies, and things like that. And I mean, we get a good turnout. A lot of people come to these events.
It's quite community. Basically, I mean, I wouldn't say it's crime-free, but I mean, you don't hear much major crimes in Mount Pearl.
Well, like I said, we grew up in St. John's, and we moved to Mount Pearl because, like I say, everybody did it at the time. But I don't ever consider leaving Mount Pearl. I don't want to go back to St. John's. They say I've got my front lawn, I've got my backyard, things I wanted. I've got some good friends. We got activities we can go to. We're getting older now, so we got a seniors club. Kids are grown now, so we don't have to stay there, so we have a place for them to play. But say home is where your heart is, I suppose, and our heart is in Mount Pearl now. So this is our home.
Hey, good.
The king and queen.
King,